welcome back to the S.H.E Gallery Show. You are live with us today with attorney Lou Wierenga. Thank you for being with us, Lou. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Good, thank you. And you are live with us today on the S.H.E Gallery Show. Please remember that you can always contact us. You can link up with us with today's guests and all of our previous guests at sharinghisenergygallery.net. You can always email us at sharinghisenergygallery@gmail.com. And you can always call us directly if you have a story or anything you feel strong about and you would like to share that with us. Please do so. So today we are here with attorney Lou. Lou was born and raised in Chicago, and he is a tax attorney who specializes in estate planning and also in business startups. So we have some really helpful tips for nonprofits and regular businesses. So, Lou, you want to talk to us a little bit more about where you grew up here in Chicago, the southwest burbs of Chicago?
Sure, southwest suburbs, Palos Heights, born and raised. Went to Shepherd High School and then went to college at UIC, which is right next door here. And then law school, went to Valparaiso University over in Valparaiso, Indiana.
Okay. And when you were little, what was it that you wanted to be when you
Sure.
when you grew up?
So before I, realized that I was going to be 6'3", I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But then I learned early on that I think to be a fighter pilot in the Navy or the Air Force, you have to be a little bit on the shorter side of things. So I had to check that one off the list.
All right. So you're the oldest sibling out of three, right?
I am.
And you're the first college graduate?
Well, I was the first college graduate, within our nuclear family, being the oldest, first one to graduate high school and go to college. But my parents, they just got jobs right after high school.
Okay. Was that a struggle for you to kind of play this leader pack for your siblings, for your brother and your sister?
Sure. So I think that much like many people who are first to go to college, the path is not very clear or well paved for them. So there's definitely some stumbling blocks that come along with that.
Mm-hmm. Did that take a part in your education? Like when you went to school, do you think you were a better student because you wanted to be a good older brother, or were you kind of like an underachiever and just kind of got by, and how did that change?
Sure, so definitely underachiever, definitely on the immature side of things. Not quite sure what to do, how to go about things, not a lot of examples for myself. But, over time you learn from your mistakes and you go from there.
Mm-hmm. So even though you claim you were an underachiever, you also were highly motivated. So when you found something that really motivated you, you challenged yourself. And that happened when you got a little bit older. You want to talk to us a little bit about how you ended up with interest to the architect field?
Certainly. So the one subject that I did enjoy in high school was drafting. Took that all 4 years while I was in high school, got some college credit for that, did pretty well, went to competitions, and I thought this would be a good field for myself. At the time, the architecture field was just transitioning from paper and pencil board drawings to actually CAD drawings, which was very much computer generated. So you go from kind of having an artistic approach to architecture to a lot of just coding essentially and typing on the computer. So that kind of deterred me a little bit, and then once I got to UIC, they have an architecture program there. Unfortunately, I wasn't accepted to the program, so at that point it was continue to go to school and try to be accepted in the years to come, or switch majors, and that's actually what I ended up doing. I transitioned from the liberal arts college to the business college at UIC, and then pursued a degree in economics.
Interesting. So you like the drawing aspect of drafting?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Did you draw ever, before?
So I actually do have some artistic talents.
You didn't talk about that.
I can draw. My niece loves to see me do some chalk drawings on the driveway over my parents' house. So yeah, absolutely. When I was in high school, I did the drafting, paper and pencil. Had some success at that level, and absolutely, I love it. And like I said, that's kind of what deterred me a little bit, or kind of it wasn't as big of a blow when I wasn't accepted to the architecture program because of that, because I knew that the industry itself was going to computers, and it's really not drawing at that point. It's all you're just essentially using the keyboard a lot of
Right.
times, and so it's
Technology
the industry
taking
is
over.
exactly the industry is much different once that kind of happened.
Wow. So, you went through some trials and errors also while you were at the UIC architect, or when you did not get accepted to the UIC architect program. You went through some trials and errors, and then you continued to study economics, right? That's where you ended up getting your degree.
Absolutely.
Why economics, and what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Sure. So the economics
The
degree
list.
is quite in line with how I pursued a lot of my life, and that was taking the path of least resistance. So I think that particular degree ended up being the result of, in the business school you have marketing, management, finance, accounting, economics, and marketing and management. It didn't seem like I was going to be able to potentially transition that well into the job market once I graduated, and accounting and finance to me at that time seemed to be too difficult. So economics it was.
Economics is difficult too.
Yeah, it was actually challenging, definitely, and it was
is.
very useful, and it still is very useful to my life. So I'm happy with that decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think economics is important in life, period. Everything is supply and demand. Everything is supply and demand. And we don't realize how much control we have over that by what we demand. We demand silly things, then that's going to be the economics of the world that we live in. So we have to be careful with what we demand. But it does run everything, economics, I think, in many different ways. So
Very true.
yeah, so then you also, while you were there, you also attained some licenses, and then you got into stock tradings. Can you please talk to us a little bit about when you dabbled in all of that?
Sure. So
And
after
how you ended up going to law school
Oh,
for
sorry.
that? No,
Yeah.
it's okay, sorry.
So I graduated undergrad with a degree in economics, and so then I was going to pursue, or at that point I was considering pursuing something in the finance industry. I got a job offer doing day trading, and while I was learning day trading, I was also studying for the Series 7 at that time, and sat for the Series 7, and at that point was actually told that I did not pass the Series 7. So
Talk
that
to us about what the Series 7 is, because I
Sure,
didn't know before
sure.
I talked to you.
So very generally, when you want to trade securities, you need to have a license. There's a governing body. FINRA is the acronym for that, and they control, or they license who is able to trade securities as a career. There's many tests. One of the tests is the Series 7, and that's the one that I sat for, so that I
It's
could
good
be
to
a
know
day
that's
trader.
being monitored, I think.
Well, Bernie Madoff was I think the chairman of the SEC, and we know how that turned out. So I don't know how the monitoring is going, but
Wow. At least it appeared to be, right?
yeah, there is
Right.
the appearance of that.
Right. So then, when did you move into this choice to study law? And what did you like and didn't like about being a law student? We always talk about
Sure.
like the education system and our disappointments with it, and what we could do to maybe like better it.
Sure. So the law school path was actually a result of growing up being kind of anti-authoritarian and argumentative and stubborn. So I think a lot of kids that have those characteristics, their family and friends say, "Oh, you would make a great lawyer." I'm not quite sure that's a compliment.
It is, because when you argue, you don't need to go for it.
Yeah. So, kind of always in the back of my mind, the idea of becoming a lawyer was there. And then once I kind of got the degree, the undergrad degree, and then the finance thing didn't seem to be working, I pursued it. A friend of mine was actually going, considering law school as well. So he and I started to study together for the law school admission test. And that whole part of my life was just kind of like I'll take the next step, and kind of just see what happens. So then what ended up happening is I got accepted to Valparaiso and went there, and yeah, became a lawyer.
What did you like and what didn't you like about it, as far as like like how expensive school
Sure.
is and how unrealistic sometimes the schools can be with when people are trying to go to school and then end up graduating and end up with bigger debts.
Sure. So the law school industry itself, and really the legal industry, is saturated with attorneys. The income potential is not as great as everybody might think it is. The cost of law school is astronomical, 6 figures plus. So you have a lot of people who are going to law school, incurring a massive amount of debt, and the job potential out there, especially in the beginning, is not there. So absolutely, much like the undergrad situation as well, and really the student loan industry in general in this country is just growing by leaps and bounds, and it's really it's no different for law school. So I think that if for those that are considering law school, it's really a massive decision in your life, because you're talking about $200,000 in debt, 3 years of your life, a license, and then you have to try to create a career out of that. So it's difficult. So it's a massive decision.
And it's a very competitive field. And then you're kind of like stuck. Like if you're licensed in Illinois, you can only live in Illinois. So it's a lot to think about. And then you mentioned the LSATs, the way that the grading scale works, and it's very challenging. So thank you for pulling through and becoming an attorney. So then now you're a brand new graduate, and what happened in the world in 2008 that made things a little bit more challenging for you? How did you pick yourself back up to where you are at now?
Sure.
Working with the dozen of attorneys that you're working with.
Sure. So I graduated in 2008, and graduated in May, and then that fall Lehman Brothers collapsed and our country went into a recession. Sat for the bar exam that summer, passed it, became licensed in November of 2008. So much like the job market in general in this country, the legal job market was no different. There were no jobs, there was massive layoffs, and then so here I am, a brand new law graduate with massive student loan
Great time
debt
to graduate.
and no economy, no market to become gainfully employed. So definitely graduating law school 2008, and for about 2.5, 3 years after that was very challenging for my career and myself personally. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we all go through that. I think a lot of times people look at attorneys and they just think like, oh, whatever, they may have a maid or blah, 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 or they're just rich or they don't get it. And it's like, no, it's actually, they work really, really, really hard, and a lot of them don't even get to practice. A lot of them don't even get to practice.
Very true.
So I've also been in the legal field for a long time, and I know that it's very challenging. I did not have the guts to go through and actually go to law school, but I really praise everybody that does, especially women out in the field. Props to your fiance, who I'm sure is watching, who is also an attorney.
She is a very good one.
And that's also very inspiring because it's very difficult. So then you hook up with a dozen of attorneys, and now you can actually start working towards what you have studied for. Can you please talk to us about what that was like and why you went into estate planning and tax planning or tax business, and why what was it about working with entrepreneurs that you really liked as well?
Sure. So because the legal profession or the legal career wasn't really taking off from the jump, I got involved in some tech startups and kind of got interested in Silicon Valley and venture capitalism and angel investing and those types of things. And just kind of involving myself in that market, I met a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small business owners, a lot of creative people.
You started something with your brother, or with your cousin.
I did. I started a website with my cousin. It was called Fofolio, or Fantasy Stockbroker. And essentially what we did was we took the structure of fantasy football, and instead of NFL players, we used publicly traded stock, but we followed the same format as a fantasy football league would go. And we launched it. We had users, and then
That's really neat.
I moved to Silicon Valley, tried to pursue some investments, some venture capital. That didn't pan out, so then I came back here. But
that was in California.
Exactly, in California.
Did you actually move out there?
I did. I moved to San Jose for about 6 months to pursue that, and so that didn't work out. But it did actually kind of bring me to the area of law that I thought I would enjoy the most, and that's the small business.
So you're
aspect
still
of law.
working on that in some way?
So I don't do anything with the site that I created,
Right.
the Fantasy Stockbroker, but I do work with tons and tons and tons of entrepreneurs and small business owners. So we help them with things from organization through all the transactional documents that you do, and then also the income tax aspect of their business. And then if things go well, then they want to talk to us about estate planning for their personal assets. Yeah.
And these are really three really, really important areas of the law that not a lot of people have the guts to jump into because they're thorough and they're difficult. They're extremely complicated. So you can talk to us a little bit about some really helpful tips. When I talked to you, I was like, wow, Wow, people really need to know that, and I wish I hadn't asked, because ignorance is bliss sometimes.
True,
but
true.
but it's better not to live in ignorance and to know what's going on with the world because it's constantly changing, especially in the day of the laws today. So you want to talk to us a little bit about the changes to the tax code that I was like, what?
Sure. So starting in 2018, there was a new act that was passed, and I think the last time I saw was 500 plus pages of new provisions. So we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all the changes. But there are some significant changes to the way people will report their itemized deductions, which has to do with charitable contributions.
Charitable contributions. Who should know? Who should know this? People that are making the contributions. People that are receiving the contributions.
Sure.
Who is this important?
I think it's important for both sides of the transaction because when you're a not-for-profit, you're going out there and soliciting donations, and part of the incentive for people to donate to your cause is that it's tax exempt, or it's a charitable contribution for them, so then they can report that as a deduction on their tax returns, receive a tax benefit. So it's important for the 501c3s or the not-for-profits out there to be aware of the tax changes because for those people who were realizing a tax benefit from their charitable contributions, now they may not be realizing a tax benefit because the standard deduction threshold, generally speaking, is just about doubled. So there's many people who were itemizing in the past who now, starting in 2018, will no longer be itemizing. So to the extent that they're charitable, that's fantastic, and they should continue to do that. But there's actually for some people, there's not going to be a tax benefit for it anymore.
Okay, so if you're making a contribution, let it be from your heart, because you may
That's
not
right.
be
Well, that's
able
where it
to. You may not be able to claim it. Yeah,
Exactly.
it
That's
should
where
be.
that's where it should be. No matter what, you shouldn't be being charitable because you want to receive a tax benefit.
Yeah, 'cause that might change.
It-
And when
it
is that
has
going to change?
So it's already changed. January 1st, 2018 was the change. So people aren't going. It won't make a difference for this tax filing season because it's 2018 tax season for the 2017 tax year. But now next year, you'll have the 2019 tax season for 2018 tax year.
That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really, really important. And then the importance of estate planning. Or did you want to share any other tax tips?
So the other large area that keeps coming up in our practice is the 20% deduction on income for small business owners, essentially. And there's a lot of exceptions to it. There's a lot of guidelines and rules, but the overarching thing there is that S corps, LLCs, sole proprietors are going to realize a 20% deduction on their income for the 2018 tax year. Again, there's definitely guidelines and exceptions, and you need to be aware of those. But generally speaking, that's the change.
That's a lot of change.
Yeah, definitely.
It is. Things that we don't think about because we're not working them, on a day-to-day
Sure, yeah,
basis.
absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that with us. Now we are what I work with in the law aspect of things is, I deal with a lot of people that are injured and sometimes fatally injured, and you really get to value the delicacy of life when you're in these fields. The nurses too and doctors, thank you for everything that you do. Because life is very sensitive and people die every single day. And we know this. We know that none of us are going to be here forever, but we don't think about it. We don't like to think about it. It makes us uncomfortable. But we should think about it because it's our families that are left here to take care of everything else. And it's a very difficult time. So do you want to talk to us about estate planning and why it's so important?
Sure. I think what you just said there touches on a major aspect of estate planning is that people tend to think of estate planning as something that concerns them and only them, and it's really just their own decision. But the truth of the matter is that the estate plan is in place for what you want to happen when you're gone. So really it's your family, your heirs, and the people that you appoint or nominate that are going to be affected by your estate planning. If you don't do any estate planning, then the state law is going to control what happens to your assets or your children or what have you. If you do estate planning, then you can let's say, tragically, say a parents pass away, then you can decide who's going to be the guardian of your children and how that care is going to take place, and then how you want your assets to be distributed. And it's very important, and I think that although it can be something that is not pleasant to think about, and it can be a little bit of an arduous task to actually go through with all the estate planning and put that all together, I think that once it's done, most of my clients feel that it's a weight off their shoulders, and they feel good knowing that there is a plan in place. Because like you said, everybody's going to pass away at some
Yeah.
point, so it's
At
it's good
any
to know.
age.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
Like
and then
at any age. That was another
absolutely.
thing that you had mentioned. Because I always tell people that I know, like, you have a family, you have kids, you need to get your will, you need to do your estate planning. Um, but it's not just if you have kids. It's not just if you have a family. You made a really good point about, say you're somebody that's 18, where now you don't have a legal guardian, but you still kind of depend on your family, and at this point you let the estate or the state have a word.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I was mentioning with that is, so another part of estate planning is actually how you would like your end of life decisions to be handled, or how would you like your property or your healthcare to be handled should you
Healthcare.
become unable to make decisions on your own. So that could be something like a car accident where you maybe are in a coma, or
There's a
you
lot
have
of
a
those.
stroke, or let's say you start to have dementia or Alzheimer's. There's many situations where you are no longer capable of making decisions for yourself, but you're still alive. And so then you get into the powers of attorney for healthcare and property, and then there you can list out some direction of how you want certain things to be handled in a situation where you're not the one making those decisions, and you can name people to make those decisions for you. So as you touched upon, once you turn 18 years old, your parents don't have just an automatic right to talk to the doctors, to know your medical history, to any of that stuff. So there could be a situation where maybe you're off at college, your 18-year-old is off at college, and as the parent, you know that they're maybe not completely capable of making all their own decisions, but the state says that if something happens to them,
Right.
you might get a phone call that your son or daughter are in the hospital, but the hospital isn't going to necessarily share with you why they're there or what kind of a condition they're in. So if you have the power of attorney for healthcare, let's say, then you can provide that to the health care facility or the healthcare professional, and then you can be part of the decision-making process. So I think as a parent,
What you want to be for your child.
exactly. So as a parent of a child who has recently turned 18, I think it's an important document to have in place. Definitely.
Thank you for sharing that with us. We only have a few minutes because the show went by so fast. But you can still call us. You can still call us at 312-738-1060. And you can always reach Lou and us directly through our website. I wanted to ask you to give the audience some tips before starting a business, things for the people to think about, the pros and the cons.
Sure.
Any kind of business.
Sure, absolutely. So I think that there are certain fees and certain things that will eat up a lot of your time in the beginning when you're considering the path of an entrepreneur or a small business owner. And I think it's useful to work with a professional early on so that you can get an idea of when is a good time to do certain things. So maybe you have a product, maybe you have a service, maybe you have an idea, but you're not quite at the stage of a business. And then you might reach out to a professional and try to incorporate or organize, or you want to get an employer identification number with the IRS, or potentially an operating agreement, shareholder agreement, what have you, or trademarks, things like that. And you might think that that's the next best step to do in your entrepreneurial path, but you talk to a professional and they might be able to guide you based upon where you're kind of at in the evolution of your product, service, idea, business, what have you. And then maybe necessarily it might not be a good idea or a good use of your funds to do those things that day or that week, where many entrepreneurs, many small business owners are bootstrapped. There's very limited funds. The runway to achieve success is maybe very short, so the allocation of resources is very important. And maybe formalizing your business at any in the very beginning is not the best step. Now, obviously, every situation is different, but generally, it's a good idea to work with a professional early on. And many law firms, many professionals are willing to kind of give you that initial free advice before you sign on, and then go from there.
So you should talk to a professional first. But don't give up your dreams. Don't ever give up your dreams. Don't get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed every single day. You take one step at a time and just keep going. You just want to reach out to a professional because you want to make sure that you're doing things correctly. But it's very good to dream and to dream big, and this is why we are offering these resources so that you can go ahead and dream big and reach us directly, and we can help you make sure that you are doing things correctly. Lou, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
This
so
was a
I've known
real
Lou a
treat.
long, long time, before he was an attorney, when he had a dream to be an attorney. So it's really, really cool to see him become an attorney, become a father.
Thank you, thank you.
And doing all of this, and now he's helping us, so thank you so much. Join us again next week. Take care.
Bye.